Hello everybody, and welcome from the New South Wales Fall Prevention and Healthy Ageing Network to our 2025 annual forum. I forget which one this is, but we're certainly a lot. I think we might be up to about 30, so we've been in the business a good while, and so it's wonderful to be back here again in the Wesley, which has been our home for many years now. We'll start off now with our welcome. And we have Raymond Weatherall today, and he's going to deliver the welcome to country for us today. So welcome, Raymond, please.
I usually wait for people to clap me out the door so that way I can quicken my step to get to the car, so that parking's a killer in the city, as we know. And I'm not going to talk about the cost of living or anything. They've done that enough, I think, leading up to tomorrow. So, obviously, over the last week and stuff like that, there's been probably a tad of controversy with welcome to countries and stuff. And I'll give you an example where my mother and father, so I'm not from this country. I come from 750 kilometres northwest of here. Not a lot of infrastructure where I was born. Colombinabri on the Barwon River, west of Moree. So my parents brought me here for an education. We first moved to Redfern on Gadigal country probably 75, 76. There was a social upheaval at that time in and around there where obviously services were needed, the AMS and the ALS and other things. So for us, we were always sort of socially conscious about things that had to happen within our community. I want to fast forward probably 50 years now, 4 years, to now. When I wake up on Durrawal country, I live in Campbelltown. So every morning when I wake up, I know where I am, whose country I'm on. And every border that I travel across when I drive into the city. I'm the Senior Culture and Heritage Officer of Metro Land Council, but I also do these as well. If people have a question in regards to language that has to be used or they want to use I've had 2 or 3 over the past 2 weeks from schools who sort of want to change the names of their houses and what they could use, or lorikeets, any stories about those. So I'm sort of the Cultural Engagement Officer for that as well, to give people a better understanding of the language that's been used, pre-colonisation to now, because it is still used, and for me to be standing here to deliver a welcome for you, I've been given permission by the elders that are still there, Auntie Joan and Uncle Alan. Auntie Joan sort of had to take a month off. She's 82 years old, so my father's 79, so I know that chronic disease is not a good thing within, aging communities, anyone's, so they're less mobile, and people are in so much of a rush these days, you know what I mean, that they don't even look outside of themselves to look when older people are there. They'll bump into them, knock them over and stuff like that. And we're sort of taught from a very young age, most people that I know, that I grew up in and around that, to think externally, about the world, your family, your clan, your nation, but every single person that you come into contact with. I gave one the other day where I was across the road, a day after Cook landed at Gamay, Botany Bay, on the 29th of April. A lot of people will get confused around January 26th and start arguing about it, but it actually happened on the 29th of April, and the doctrine of discovery, where he interacted with Aboriginal people there. Obviously, he took the Guigal artefacts, the shield and the spears. They were held by Cambridge University, and they led him to the Lapras Land Council a couple of years ago to show them. And it wasn't until he got to Queensland where they got shipwrecked. For 8 weeks, they were stranded there, but the Aboriginal people of that area helped him to get the wood and everything to source it to fix that boat. And then he still said terra nullius. So there would be a bit of anger in and around that from Aboriginal people, and I'm a trauma counsellor by trade. I work with men who come out of prison as well. I have 2 jobs. It's not because of the cost of living. It's just because I want my daughters to get where they've got to be. You know, and they go to a sports high school. My 2 daughters walked out the door this morning, travelled from Campbelltown on a train and a bus to go to Matraville Sports High School. One's netball, one's rugby league. You know, but education is the most important part of that for them. If they don't get certain marks, then I don't pay their fees. It's just that simple, because my parents brought me here for that. My father and mother certainly didn't have that opportunity, being born before 67. You know, but my mother empowered herself when we got to Sydney to go to Milperra College to get a degree in social welfare, you know, because she worked at the Aboriginal Children's Service, then Centrelink, and then the Department of Aboriginal Affairs, you know. So my father was a miller, you know, but he's a man who did 14-hour shifts every day, and on a Saturday morning he would come and watch us play rugby league without any sleep. You know, and we'd sort of sit with him on a Saturday when he played his records, and he got himself a carton of beer and he just sat there singing songs and telling us stories about growing up on country. You know, him and his father, they started work at 10 years old. You know, my grandfather did his first muster from Mount Isa at 10, back to Goomera country. You know, my great-grandfather was Ned, they called him, but Edward Weatherall. He was born in Sussex in England. You know, he married my great-grandmother, Edith Hardy, from Brewarrina. You know, she was taken there, obviously, from Angledore Reserve. Back then, you weren't allowed to marry, you know, black people if you were white, you know, but they did it anyway. Love does it, you know. You'll break any rule that you can, you know, to be with the person that you love. They took her back to Brewarrina from Collarenebri. She walked 200 kilometres along the river to be with him, you know, and that legacy, obviously, you know, it still lives on with us. They buried him, so in the town where I was born, we still bury the people who passed. It's our obligation to the family. So we dig the grave. Obviously, it's got easier over the years because you don't use a shovel and a pick anymore, or a mattock. They've got jackhammers where you can put on a shovel piece, so it makes it a bit easier. But you still do that. You know, so they buried him, and the women are taught to burn the glass. So you put that over the top of the grave after it's sunk, after a couple of years. Obviously now there's been a bit of rain up home, which is good. We're out of drought, so it sinks a bit quicker. So the process is putting 2 sticks in the end of the grave when they're straight. It's time to clear off the top, put concrete on the top. Only around the outside of it, a rectangular shape, where then you put the glass. My mother's was done in South Sydney. She loved the Rabbitohs, you know, and I'm a Bulldog all the way. So we had I had many arguments and felt alone a lot of the time in the house, with a house full of South supporters with 5 siblings, mum, dad, and even family members who came from Moree or Collie to stay with us at times. But I thought I'd give you just a little bit of yarn, you know what I mean, because welcomes are personal things, you know, and Gadigal is a beautiful area, you know, and I did one the other week over where the first fleet actually pulled in to a cove on the other side, you know, and the police sort of go there for conferences from around the country. You know, there's a submarine site on the other side, and where I work with my second job, where I help the men transition out of prison, I take them around to those sites in and around Sydney, because there are more carvings in the rock here and sort of rock art than anywhere else in the country, you know, because of the sandstone that's in Sydney, you know, so it's a tangible thing. You can actually see it in the physical presence, you know, that the culture is still there. Most people are disconnected not only from their family or their country, but from their culture, you know, with their language, you know, and obviously I've done myself a disservice because I didn't introduce myself to this country and my language before I started speaking, you know, but at the end I'll do it just to leave you with a bit of language in the room. As it was heard here before, across the harbour more so than anywhere else, where we did a lot of ceremony with Gumaragal, you know, and obviously Barangaroo, she was a very proud woman, you know, and she was Gumaragal. You know, I always go by the happy wife, happy life, you know, and I've got 7 daughters and a son, you know, so I tell him, you'll lose every argument for the rest of your life, but it's okay, you know, and my daughter's 31 down to 7, you know, so my wife sort of talks about when we went home for a funeral once to Weatherall, you know, where Arthur Murray, he's my dad's cousin, so my uncle, he was sort of, they left him at the club, my dad's younger brother, and we were driving in our old combi, and sort of we spotted him at the thing, and he jumped in and stuff like that. So at the time I was driving the car, and my wife was in the back seat with my uncle, and he said to her, I don't only welcome you to our family, but I welcome you to my country. And she talks about that today as being welcomed. So she was born Samoan, came here in 93 from New Zealand, where everything that she does these days, she embraces being Gomeroi. The language, because there's certain things that I cannot talk to my daughters about or teach them. They're girls. So it's not culturally appropriate. So she's learned our language, sat in circles with our women so that way she can have that and do that later, you know. So when you embrace something else, it's not forgetting who you are and where you come from. It's actually widening your scope of acceptance. You see, and a lot of people don't do that, you know, and sort of, I'll give you an example, and I'm going to sort of change the yarn a bit, and I'll be there in a second, Kaz. I do tell people there, Stephen, sorry that you put me in front of a mic, mate, and I might give you a story for 3 hours. I've got a site assessment over at Linfield soon too, so I am quite mindful, and as I said with car parking, mate, it's a good money-making scheme in here, the city, so I want to get back over the road to get my car out of there very quickly. But when I start getting into a yarn and that, I want to engage with you as an individual, to the lady up on the right, to you up on the left, up the back on your phone there, you know, but it's okay, she might be listening, I don't know. Because that's what it is when you're welcoming someone to Gadigal, you know, and I'm a representative of Metro, and I know the vision. I've known Nathan Moore, and they're the CEO since we were young boys. His mother worked at the Department of Aboriginal Affairs with my mother when they wrote up the New South Wales Land Rights Act in 1983. Our daughters play rugby league together for Redfern All Blacks now, you know, so it's a generational thing. You know, Yvonne Weldon, if you have a look on her wall of her Facebook and stuff like that, there's a photo of me and her on the outside of her uncle, Paul, you know, when he was giving a speech, you know, on NAIDOC Day, I think it was. We used to call it A-Day back then. It was Aboriginal Day, but A-Day. They call it NAIDOC Week now. But, you know, we would march from Redfern down to Town Hall, you know, but her mum, Anne, used to work with Mum at the Aboriginal Children's Service, where Koori Radio is now. They sort of built over the Black Theatre there, you know. So I've known these people all of my life. I know what they want to empower our young people. You know, they want them to succeed, not just to be. You know, I'm glad you distracted me there, because I was going to tell you a bit of a bad yarn about last week, but I'm not. You know, sort of for me, I'm a thick-skinned fella. You know, I come from Collie and Moree, and we're a different kind of breed. I put up with crap all my life. You know, that was external to me, but you handled it differently back then, but you can't answer violence with violence. It's just not the way. You know, so with growth, you beat people with your words, you know, and my daughters were subjected to it last week by a lady who called them dirty effing abos because they thought they didn't tap on to a train station, you know, and my wife's Samoan and looks it. So the lady singled them out, you know, and I used to get that when I was first going to school 50 years ago. So it hasn't changed. And I asked some people the other day there, you know, when I did the one, and that obviously in the future you'll be able to go like this here and just go, Stephen Lord, my ancestor. What's a legacy Stephen's going to leave for society today? What are you going to do? you know. What did he say about that or do about that? How did he engage with people? What were the conversations he had? How did he uplift and empower people? You know, because I think about those things every single day. Because I tell my daughters every day that you are answerable to people you've never met. Your great-great-grandmother, your great-grandmother, all of these people that went before you. You know, their great-grandmother was a domestic that lived on Moree Mission. You know, but she came to Sydney once when she won a singing contest on the radio they used to have back in the day, you know, and she was 13 years old, and the only thing she talked about down here was how big the buildings were. Because when you get out to Moree, it's all flat. You can, as far as the eye can see, you know, so I can see these two here talking, so I'm going to quicken it up a bit. On behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, I would sincerely and graciously like to welcome you to Gadigal country, you know, and on behalf of the board and the members. But from me, Raymond Weatherall, Bubbly, my nickname is, and because I'm the representative that's doing it for you today, you know, and I could stand here and talk all day about falling and aged care, but Stephen's already up, so you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Raymond. It was really lovely to have the welcome and the personal talks and the yarn, so thank you.